point where he says, well, okay, so assuming I agree that the pattern of the Bible is God calling prophets, the way that God reconciles conflicts in doctrine is through revelation to prophets. It's the way that he has unification in the biblical text. Kind of the basic premises of LDS theology. He's like, assuming I concede all that, how do I know Joseph Smith is a prophet? And I said, well, how do you know the Bible is scripture? Well, I read it. Like, you should read the Book of Mormon, and then I assume God will tell you. And he's like, well, that's subjective. I'm like, again, how do you know the Bible is scripture? Well, yeah, that's a good point. So, it's actually kind of productive.
Oh, that's good.
That's rare.
Don't usually actually get people to that point. Usually it's
Usually they throw hissy fit over the questions. Yeah.
But archaeology. Oh, okay.
That one was so hard to watch.
Did any of you catch the Jeff Lindsay episode I just did?
I haven't watched it yet.
I haven't either. I just got done with family dinner.
And I just got off this other discussion.
That's all good. But
I'm excited though. What was the topic? Book of Mormon evidences?
Book of Mormon evidences, but like he
nice.
just started talking, so I just had to like relax. Basically, he touched upon like say the Arabian Peninsula geography, some wordplays,
awesome.
And it looked like a general entree, if you will, to some of the topics. And it's only about 60 or 70 minutes. But we also discussed anachronisms like horses and also stupid combinations as a veiled reference to get 19th century anti-Masonry.
Why is that such a hang up with so many people with the horse bones?
Has made it famous.
I don't understand that. I just don't get it. I mean, bones don't stick around that long.
Sorry, I thought you were talking about the masonry stuff. Oh,
no. I'm talking about horse bones. I just don't understand why that's such a sticking point. It's just ignorance of how fossils occur. I mean, one of the first apologetic arguments I heard for it is the Mongol Empire.
Oh yeah.
Well, the Mongol Empire was largely horse based, and we can't find any horses.
Yeah.
There's no horses over there. So we know that there were because they have like statues and
oh yeah. There are tons of records of these big, like hundreds of thousands of horses, like armies invading. So
but the only piece of a horse bone they ever found is in some burial mound of some princess or something. That's the only thing they've ever found. Like why would you expect to find 2,000-year-old horses? So,
but of course, like recent discoveries have kind of shown like that may not necessarily be the case, but the Copenhagen scene from like Murphy and Sutherland was a giant of people.
Everybody wants to, like the DNA crap that came out in 2007. Everybody got all up in arms on it. Well, my dad. We
didn't have any idea what Nephite or Jaredite DNA was like.
My dad had massive problems with the Mark Hoffman crap. Tons of friends just blew a lid that how could a prophet make a mistake like that? God should have told them that people lie.
I'm sure they are aware that people lie.
How could a prophet be deceived by scientists getting things wrong? I don't know.
If you actually look at their talks, they sounded pretty skeptical. But they couldn't come out and say, "Oh, we don't believe that this is true," because
they relied on experts. Like, here, what do you guys think? Looks legit. Okay.
All of the top forgery document people in the country were like, "These are legitimate."
Yeah, and I mean, they were forger.
Yeah, and they were already running articles in the newspaper slamming the church for hiding stuff because Mark Hoffman was their source. He was going to them and saying, "Oh, the church has these documents in their possession. They're hiding them," and so they would attack the church for hiding these documents that they've already published.
And he had produced and found legitimate documents, so he had a record of producing authentic stuff, which muddied the water when they found out he was a forger because it's like what was legitimate and what wasn't.
Well, that's why they started going through all the archives to see what was in there and see what was his and what wasn't. And that's when they started finding all this other stuff that had been buried for decades.
Oh, my goodness.
Oh, what is that?
That's his interviews.
Yep.
Oh.
I came across this in Weller's bookstore.
That is fun reading, I'll bet. I'll bet you that is some of the most entertaining reading. Because he is probably bat crap crazy.
Yeah.
Jen and I wanted to interview him for our podcast.
He is a lunatic. I've watched some little scant interviews and read some stuff about interviews, but he is bat crap crazy now.
Yeah, he refuses all interviews now. So, but when we get around to doing Mark Hoffman, we want to send him a letter and see if we can interview him.
When you do Mark Hoffman, you might want to contact Steve Mayfield while he's still alive.
Oh, okay. Absolutely,
Who's Steve Mayfield?
Oh, he worked on the Hoffman case. But he's really ill, so you might want to
was he a lawyer or was he a?
I don't know. He worked in the FBI and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I think he worked with Throckmorton. But he also has a large. He basically has a collection of practically every meeting with Mark Hoffman.
Cool. Yeah, and Trevor knows him, and what is his name? The Turley who wrote the book.
Richard E. Turley, yeah. Second edition.
Yeah, we wanted to talk to him too.
No, he would be a good person to reach out to. I know they did a second edition of his book, True Digital Legend, which unfortunately is also the Heartlander Vanity Press, but still, it's still a good book, even in the second edition.
It is a really solid read.
Jed, are you shy or are you somewhere unseemly?
Why not both?
Why not both? It's not a band.
Why not both?
Okay, well, I have no idea what to do on this Chillstream. Just Todd, bring some people on, just maybe discuss the previous podcast episode and stuff like that. But
no, I wanted to. What was the video you guys were thinking about discussing from? I don't watch Ward Radio.
I hadn't watched it.
I haven't watched it as well.
It wasn't the Ward Radio one. So they had the Ward Radio one was.
It was Ward Radio. Okay, so I only watch it when it's Dawn or they got somebody else that's interesting on.
No, it's not actually a Ward Radio episode. It's it featured some people from Ward Radio.
Oh, okay. Because the main guy on it's on there.
Yeah, I had gotten confused because Ward Radio just put out one just the other day. The Mississippi bishop who quit just kind of went on Mormon stories. Yeah, he went on Mormon stories.
Of course he did.
Clips of his, I know. So they're playing clips of his interview and talking about it. And I will just say, having listened to that, I am not surprised that he ended up leaving the church. He's got some weird ideas. But that is not, that's what I thought Robert meant when he brought up the video with Quakefield.
No, it's
but it was something else.
Yeah. I haven't watched it. I kind of watched the first 2 or 3 minutes and it's super cringe.
But, I haven't seen it.
I don't know if there's interest in the chat and there's people who will send some super chats to compensate me. I'll consider doing it. But we do actually have a question already from Joseph Allen. Answer this whenever, but what does everyone think that the one eternal round type phrasing around God alludes to?
Gosh.
That's a deep question.
That's one eternal round. God is a circle and time is a loop.
Let me quote from the soon-to-be canonical 1877 lecture at the Vale.
God is in a time loop. We're all just repeating the same experiences. That's why you have deja vu. I had a guy tell me that. He's like, so God is one eternal round, and that's why we have deja vu, because we're reliving. Sure.
No, everybody knows Platonism is true and God is basically just a ball, right? That's what it means.
But what color ball is he?
Blue.
I was just going to say it's a blue ball. See? It's true. The spirit.
Right?
So many jokes I could make just on that.
That's not what I meant.
We both guessed it was blue balls.
Of course.
Are we still doing phrasing? That's my favorite from Archer. We're still doing phrasing. I do it all the time, and I do it at the most inappropriate times, like in courts and stuff. I'll be in front of a judge, and they'll say something like that, and I'm like, "Are we still doing phrasing?" And everybody looks at me like, "What?"
A zone of danger. Oh, the first 5 seasons were
It's the greatest show.
Yeah, it's really
I
good.
stopped watching it after about the 6th. I think it's on like 12 now.
Yeah, I think that's the final one, but like they should have stopped around 5 or 6. But
yeah, and then when Jessica Walters died and they took her off, she was my favorite character. His mom.
oh, she was hilarious. Like the very unhealthy relationship she had with Archer, But yeah, Archer was hilarious.
When they started doing the like, we're going back in time, or those got less funny.
Brent A from a boomer, you guys have really impressed me. Thank you. You're on a different level, but it's good to listen. Don't always understand, but I'm getting closer. That's good.
Well, I can tell you, I'm still dumb, so
yeah, it's all Robert. And
I have to. So Robert says things like this. So I got that book today, Robert.
Oh, awesome.
So it says, Paul's works of the law in the perspective of 2nd century reception. People who read books that have titles like that are smarter than you.
I'll be reading that to my infant daughter and infant son in the near future.
A reassessment of the biblical Elohim.
Yep, like bedtime reading for my future kids.
After the order of the Son of God.
Fire kindling.
That one's good though.
Born with the Water and Spirit. He even writes books that have titles like that.
I haven't read that one yet, but I have read the.
Oh, it's one of my favorites. Yeah, that's one of my favorites.
Nice.
The only thing I don't like about it
on Amazon.
So Robert does what I hate lots of scholars to do. So they'll be like, you'll be reading along, and then there's this big section that's in Greek, and he's like, "Well, that."
Yeah.
Well, duh.
Yeah, duh.
Obviously, what an idiot for thinking that. Hell, the word is this, but obviously means this. And I joke about that. I'm like, that's why Bart Ehrman, for example, became so popular, because he would write books like this that actually are accessible to people. And I said, well, why can't we read real scholarly papers? And I said, because literally they'll just write in Greek or in Hebrew, and then they'll analyze it in the margins, expecting you can read the language, because they're writing to people who can. What do we know about anything?
No, that is always the funniest thing on Robert's blog. Whenever he's, I'm reading it and he's like, "It's the word whatever," and I'm just like, "Thanks, Robert. That helps a lot."
I know.
It's
which
just
we know,
Hebrew
which any idiot, any idiot
obviously
knows.
I know.
But good, so I don't have to clarify things. Good.
If you reference that in. So I'm copying it out, sticking it in Google Translate.
I know. I have to do that too.
To be fair, I've had to do that like when it comes to geese and a few other languages I was working with for one project here. So yeah. So what does anyone want to discuss while we're on this chill stream? I am tempted like maybe watch the first few minutes.
Look, I will PayPal you. I don't know how to do the super chat thing, but I'll PayPal you to put it on. I want to watch at least a few minutes, because now I'm just curious.
Okay.
The curiosity is gonna kill me.
Okay, but we all have to react to it. It can't just be me wishing for a painful death, right?
Okay.
Yeah, if it's totally garbage and cringe, because I can't watch stuff like that. It just gets too like, oh.
I have a question though for you before we get into that.
Cool.
Yeah.
Robert, did you ever reach out to Chris Fisher from God is Open?
I forgot to respond to him.
From what? From God what?
Okay.
He's an open theist. He's a really smart guy. Yeah.
I sent you a few screenshots of some memes that he had in his Facebook group, and I thought, I forgot that he wanted you to email him.
Yeah, I forgot as well. So yeah.
Maybe you can be on each other's podcasts now.
Yeah.
So what I would prefer this video is that on the board, and then it's saying no, and then does the Larry David, what's the Larry David show?
Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Yeah, Curb, and does that at the end. No. I don't know. Can we see eye to eye?
Okay, this is going to be the Jubilee video. I'm going to play the first few seconds. Just tell me if you can hear it.
Saying that do I believe that Heavenly Father would keep her?
Can you hear it?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll just go back. I will play on speed 1.25.
Okay.
So yeah, for those in the chat, I only watched like the first 2 or 3 minutes and I gave up because John Dillon and others are in it. But this is basically
They are?
Current and ex LDS having a debate, it appears. This fellow
Why would
here
any
yeah. I don't know, go figure. But Kwaku and Cardin appear on it. So this is gonna be interesting. And Jedediah has his video off, so we won't actually see him hit his head against the wall. But yeah. You better PayPal me after this, Travis. Seriously, I need
I will.
compensation.
I'll PayPal you.
Okay,
I
so
will compensate you.
let's see. The first section is on whether Mormonism is a cult. So maybe before we discuss this.
good times.
Yes.
Okay.
The answer is yes.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll
But
watch,
not what you mean.
yeah, so let's watch at least the first 7 minutes of Is Mormonism a Cult? And
Okay.
let's see, Mormon community on the LGBT community, women in church. And is it okay for
This
self-
is something called Jubilee. What is Jubilee?
I've never heard of
I
it.
don't know.
It seems to be like a podcast.
I
It doesn't
have
seem to be
watched
religious.
some of their videos before in the past. I don't know. I've never watched them a ton, but
What
they
is it
have
like?
they frequently have videos like this where like they have like 2 or more different groups and they ask a question. You're supposed to go to a specific spot in the room or whatever, and then there's some kind of discussion. So they'll have different demographics, different religious groups, different maybe racial groups, and they just ask them questions to see if there's a variety of opinion or things like that based on just a little bit I've seen.
Like Republicans and Democrats and white supremacists and
things like that. Or like
Democrats.
I think where they had like Israelis and Palestinians or something like that, or just different things like that.
Cool.
Okay,
well, this is gonna be the intro, so
Out of the Celestial Kingdom if she
If she continues to have lesbian relationships.
Yes.
Hi, my name is Gan, and I
Based.
explore social and controversial issues through both sides. And I'll be moderating this episode of Middle Ground, Mormons versus ex-Mormons. And the first prompt is, Mormonism is a
by the way, if there's a part of me you want me to stop even before the end of the section, let me know. So
cult.
these are the XLDS.
I think some of the things that are important to pay attention to are like critical things in your life that you're told how you're supposed to do them, right? Like your sexuality, the way you dress, what you eat,
what underwear you wear, what maybe finally, because it was hard to admit, growing up Mormon, it was hard to admit that it was a cult, but I think when you look at, again, the critical thinking, the lack of it, I think is a big red flag.
I feel like with Mormonism and growing up in that culture, which is that word right there, I had no issue stepping forward, but not necessarily to specifically focus on the negative connotation, but really just what the word is. Let's call it what it is.
I'll just speak
Wait.
from a psychological perspective because that's my background.
So they don't know what the word means. I think I just admitted it. It's like that word culture, which has the root of cult in it, because he
Root
doesn't know what
fallacy.
the word means.
Yeah.
So I don't I don't know what words mean. So they're debating a question without defining a word. Okay, that's hilarious.
I'm not going to name names, but like a friend of mine posted something on a Facebook group to the fact like loads of people are worried that the church is losing their best members, but like watching Mormon stories kind of makes me realize that's not the case.
Yes. Mhm.
no.
Yes.
But yeah,
Yes. This is our best. This is our SEAL Team 6 right here.
well, if that's the case, like
Unfortunately.
the church is better off without them.
Yeah.
Does the organization, withhold information from its members with the intent of controlling the thoughts of the members? Does the organization manipulate the members through emotion? And then do they have excessive controls of behavior? And while it's deeply offensive to tell anyone they're a member of a cult, no one's going to ever say they're a member of a cult because no one thinks they're in a cult.
We have the disagreeers step forward.
So I'm a convert to the church, and
Oh, by the way, that's Timber Yard. He himself is like a member of the LGBTQ community, but he's pretty based. He basically said like if someone continues to be a lesbian, they'll be damned. And it's like, yeah, that's true.
born and raised in a partner family, lived a gay lifestyle before I joined the church, and it's a little disingenuous to me when people say that the church tried to hide stuff from me, because I grew up in a family that was very stereotypical. So it was just very strict. And
Look at, do you see Dylan? Dylan got all, but he says, I think it's very, very stereotypical when they say they started hiding. He's like,
Very stereotypical.
look at him. He got all.
Well, that is his thing.
Because that's his whole shtick. Church is hiding stuff.
Well, another certain group is definitely hiding stuff in the sex plights of their founder, but
Can I just say before we go any further,
go ahead.
This it almost seems kind of ridiculous just to kind of hear those points to me, because here's what is that 4 people who are active Latter-day Saints participating in something like this, who are willing to sit down with former members. That doesn't sound very culty to me, to sit down and discuss the matters of our faith with a group that includes one of the biggest critics of our faith. That just doesn't strike me as you can't think for yourself. You can't listen to opposing viewpoints. That's never been my own experience in the church as a convert to the church. And just this own video seems to kind of disprove that narrative.
Well, and anybody can choose whether or not they want to wear garments, or whether they want to follow the word of wisdom, or whether they want to have a temple recommend. It's not forced on you. You have a choice. Like, it's just silly.
And also say what you will about like Kwaku and Cardinal, at least on Ward Radio, but they actually discuss like a lot of the controversial topics. So it's not like sometimes I disagree with your take, but at least
they're aware of them. Yeah, they're aware of them.
Yeah, and they do have a reach, so they're informing other LDS on these topics as well, like say plural marriage, and there are videos with Don Bradley and Brian. Brian Hills doesn't appear, but like others as well on various issues, like who killed Joseph Smith, that kind of controversy. So but again, as Reddit, I know, like how many genuine cultic groups like Scientology or Cult Davidians would actually appear with former members and engage in a debate or dialogue, Again, like you kind of notice like how the term cult is not actually being defined here. We might circle back.
Well, no. John DeLynn gave us his great definition that was
which he gets from Steve Hassan, but
which is it's just the freaking bite model.
Of sensitive church history topics growing up, and that's partially why when I distanced myself from Christianity generally to go live a gay lifestyle, I really had concerns with the church. But ultimately, knowing those things only strengthened my testimony when I came back to it. I completely left that lifestyle behind, and of course I still have same-sex attraction, but I am definitely happier now being married to a woman, having kids.
Let me just say that is absolutely based.
Yeah.
And I was with my boyfriends.
When I think of a cult, I think of an organization that's really controlling, and they don't let you exercise freedom or
Mormon stories. Sorry.
How you think, they control what you say and how you say it. But if I look at Mormon culture expansively, I don't see people.
Oh, by the way, John DeLynn not into the Kwaku. Keep in mind, like John DeLynn and one of his white female guests kind of made fun of Kwaku. Like LDS are really interested in him because he sounds like a white guy and he doesn't have black vocab.
Because he's racist. Because John DeLynn is racist.
Oh yeah.
Those are racist things to say.
Yeah, they had big problems with Kwaku.
Yeah. I mean, like Timber and Kwaku are basically the unicorn of Mormonism,
right?
Mormon narrative,
people that are controlled. I feel like the word cult. I mean, if you break it down to mean, at some point someone suggested that I live my life a certain way, then everything's a cult. And if everything's a cult, then nothing's a cult.
There are many.
That is actually true. When it comes to
that's what I was just thinking.
Yeah, the bite model that works for anything. It could work for UPS. It could work for like any organization.
Yeah.
Including
it works
Mormon
for the military. It works for the
They make you wear a uniform. They make you think about certain things. They meet together. They talk about specific things. Yeah. They like the same stuff, right? So every NFL team is a cult.
Yeah, maybe we should actually define like what cult means, because like there's the scholarly definition that you find like say in biblical anthropological literature, like it refers to like any religious veneration or cultus. The Second Vatican Council in De Verbum refers to like the cult of Mary, but you're not gonna that's not like the Catholic Church saying that like veneration of Mary is like this evil ominous practice, or the temple cult that refers to like say religious worship in the Jerusalem temples and stuff like that, So like there's a scholarly definition of the term cult, but like usually when it comes to say how it's often used against Latter-day Saints and other groups like Christadelphians and other even Catholics, funny enough.
And atheists have now taken that definition a step further, because it used to be something that people of other faiths accused churches and groups like Jehovah's Witnesses, to marginalize us as cults. They're a cult, but now the atheist agnostic camp is changing it again and bringing it even further and calling all religions cults. So it's just an absurd, accusation.
Because you did that response to the CS letter, Sarah. Like, how would you define cult, and like how would you contrast that, like say, with the very simplistic view, like say Reynolds and Dylan and others would use it, especially like say the bullshit bike model theory.
So if we're talking religious cults and you're thinking like the Hare Krishnas or whatever, I would say that is somebody like a small group with a charismatic leader who does engage in like thought control and manipulation and like predatory practices and things. But overall, the definition I normally point to is the more scholarly one, because that's just what I'm more familiar with. But as far as what John Dillon and Jeremy Reynolds have to say, I mean, we get slammed with the bite model all over Reddit and all over everywhere online. And it's just silly because, like we were saying, everything falls under the bite model. So I think they take it way too far. And I think that they very conveniently omit the fact that all of their organizations fall under the exact same thing.
Yeah.
Because under their definition, the ex-Mormon subreddit is a cult. And all of the people who participate in it are a cult.
And Mormon Stories is a cult.
Yeah.
Because if you think, like, say, it's founded by a charismatic leader, Dylan, it has a controversial history, Rosebud, anyone, it hides information.
They all tell the exact same stories. They use the same phrases and the same words. They quote from the same documents. They post all of the same pictures of them showing off their porn shoulders or whatever. I mean, like, it's ridiculous. And they actively attack anybody who goes outside of their definition of what they believe is acceptable. And they will shame and attack and hound anybody off of the ex-Mormon subreddit if they dare defend the church over anything. So I think that they are not ones to point fingers.
Yeah, let's kind of continue and let's see.
Members of the church who have this mindset that when the prophet speaks, the debate is over and you should just not think about it. And
which I will note was actually condemned by the then president of the church. I think was Heber.
Spencer W. Kimball.
Oh, he discussed it as well, but like there was the
1945. The original one, yeah.
Yeah,
because Joseph F. is the one that's quoted as saying that. Is that right?
No, there was an anonymous article in the Improvement Era that basically said like leaders think, but like a Unitarian minister queried Heber J. Grant about that, and he basically said no, we're all to think for ourselves, blah blah blah. All of that quote keeps coming up, but and like it was kind of reiterated in a degree by Spencer W. Kimball, but there was like the context of the Equal Rights Amendment around that time as well, like. The B.H. Roberts Foundation will actually be having an article on prophetic fallibility later this year, and it will be addressing that in more detail. But
all right. Well, even Spencer W. Kimball had an issue with it when it was the Relief Society president or the Young Women's president.
Yeah, who said it in like an unqualified sense during conference.
Yeah, and he, and like the next day he came to her office and was like, "Please don't ever say that again." So
I think that is cultish. But that is not what the church has taught over time.
I think, though, that you are told, seek your own answer, pray, but if it differs from what the prophet is saying, then you might be being deceived by Satan or you got the wrong answer.
Does this lady actually think objective truth doesn't exist?
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Because like you could turn this all around like, well, you believe in this system, so like any investigations from now on you will engage in has to agree with this kind of preconceived worldview. And I really doubt and if she's going to go down to like the whole determinist route, like say Bill Real, like you're just a bunch of molecules bouncing off one another. There's no objective truth anyway. But I mean, that works for any system. You know, there is like all interpretation is theory laden, like every thing has to go through like some kind of filter. So you know, this is like trying to make us like into cultish, but at the same time, this works for any worldview. You know, there has to be like some kind of ultimate authority going on when it comes to like either secular or religious ideas as well, you know. Any thoughts?
No, I was just thinking that a lot of the people who kind of are in these perspectives also agree with the queer theory kind of ideology that's pervasive in society today, and
which is other BS.
Well, which again, it's gender becomes a social construct that's all socially constructed.
Yeah.
You know, sex and gender are separate from one another, and like you were saying, objectively, they're anti-scientific. They become anti-scientific, and to me, you're adopting an ideology that's objectively wrong, but the authority to which you're pleading says to adopt this ideology contrary to the objective reality. So I mean,
and you see this like when it comes to the persecution
of
professionals who think otherwise. You know, I'm not going to name names like a certain friend of ours who is trying to be blacklisted for just like being conservative when it comes to say psychological issues and stuff like that. So you know, it works for all systems here. But yeah.
It should ultimately align with what the prophet is saying. And that's why they say, you know, read the Book of Mormon, pray, see if it's true for yourself. And if you don't get an answer, pray harder. Go talk to someone, have more experiences, try again, until you get the right answer that it's true. So I think it's a little disingenuous to say that you can seek truth on.
Okay, medical professional goes up to you and says like there's only two genders and transgenderism's a psychiatric disorder. Would this lady actually agree with that or tell them to do their more research or something like that? Again, this happens in every.
You need to look at the science. The science has been saying that for
yeah, and again, like this is like all part and parcel of any worldview and any epistemology. There has to be like some kind of normative authority, you know.
Well, no, and the thing is what I get bothered with, and this is just my own professional training, is people don't even make sense when they're speaking. Like what she said is actually incoherent. I know what she meant, but what she said was you're supposed to get an answer, you do certain things, you pray, you read, whatever. You don't get an answer, so they tell you to go back and keep doing those things. But again, her premise was you haven't gotten an answer. But then she changed it to until you get the answer we want you to. But that's so even as they think, they haven't really thought these things through. And I'm not saying it's a big issue. It's just demonstrative of the fact that they're just saying crap. They have not really in their head or in any practical setting articulated their argument ever. And so they're just randomly grasping at ideas, which makes their vocalization of those things completely incoherent.
Yep. To be fair, like I was told like it was a 3-hour show, but it was cut down to like say 50 minutes. So I'm sure there's like some things that are lost, but you know, this is the cut that we have to work with.
On your own that doesn't align with the prophet, because that doesn't generally just seem to be how it goes.
Yeah, but that completely goes in the face of, I was a missionary for 2 years, and the number one message we do when we present the Book of Mormon and Mormonism at large to somebody is the infamous Moroni's promise. We say, go home, pray about it. You need to develop a relationship with God that is so unique and strong that you can recognize when he is talking to you, whether or not this is the path you're supposed to take. The idea that Mormonism is a cult is a pejorative trope that has been an anti-Mormon slur against the church for a long time. And I always ask, by what rubric? You mentioned the bite model before, and
I often disagree with Carbon, but he's bringing up a good point. Like, no one has actually defined here what cult is. And if you bring up the bite model,
oh, look, the bite model, there it is.
Any system. Yep. I have like 1 or 2 spoof posts on my blog, like showing UPS, he's actually a cult and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You know, and it works for any organization. Again, you could apply it to Mormon stories.
You could apply it to the Boy
it's
Scouts or the
and
military
here's the
or
thing,
whatever.
Hassan's model has been criticized for the absolute BS it truly is by other actual experts when it comes to religion. I think Massimo Interverghini, or however you pronounce his name, has been very critical of Hassan and others as well, and they're not LES. I personally believe he's a grifter, but that's just me. Any thoughts? Because, Cardin of all people actually bring up the most important point. It's like, dude, the terms have not been defined here.
Well, I guess, I would just piggyback on that just to say that, like as someone who has worked in like fast food, okay, let's just say at that fast food job, you're required to have a certain dress code. If you don't, you can be sent home without pay. You have to be there at certain times. You have certain expectations. There's certain rules and regulations you have to follow.
Grooming.
Which if you don't, you're subject to disciplinary action. There's certain phrases.
Dress, behavior, speech.
Everything's
Right. Controlled.
There's certain things I have to use. We take orders with technology with iPads. Well, guess what? Those iPads don't allow you to go on the internet and search for things. So one could say that that's limiting your freedom, that's limiting your access to information on your job. I mean, it's just things like that really, if you break it down, you could apply all of those things to that.
And certain fast foods,
which kind of shows this absolute BS model. It doesn't really affect. It's worthless. But yeah, go ahead.
It's just like Kwaku said. It's if the word doesn't have any definition, everything's a cult. The word is meaningless, and it's a pejorative. It's just like what he's saying.
Basically, what people who use this want to usually give the impression, like say we're basically going to be like the next Waco. We'll probably just like die. In the fire with the FBI or CIA or some other evil triad. Letter or agency, a la Branch Davidians and David Koresh or Jim Jones.
And what kills me is some of the best, most dedicated Latter-day Saints are the ones that know the absolute most about its history, about its doctrine, about the scriptures, about the words of prophets, who accept prophetic fallibility, who understand prophetic fallibility, who understand that, all these anti-Mormon arguments and tropes, we all know all that stuff. And so it's like Robert's a convert. Robert's not a convert because he was brainwashed, right? He's a convert after years of study, dedicated research, and continued that study and that analysis. Jedediah is the same. You've done the same. Our friend Jennifer, she's not some dupe that was an uneducated rube who got rolled up into brainwashing cult nonsense. She's a person who read thick books and continued to do that. I mean, it's just, I don't know.
Well, and look ridiculous. At Don. Don
left and came back.
Because he studied and he learned more. And he went,
and even though he left, he actually still had good relations with Daniel Peterson and other people as well. He wasn't ostracized or cast out.
No, he wasn't shunned.
Yeah, I mean, even Brian Hales hired him.
Yeah,
we have whole symposiums and groups. I mean, anybody who knows something like FAIR exists, or what's the other one? The anti-FAIR. I always forget the name of that other one.
Sunstone.
Sunstone. Yeah, the Sunstone is not. Well, the Sunstone is not culty, everybody's a faithful, saluting Latter-day Saint. The Sunstone's full of controversial, criticism. It's full of it. Misrepresentation, bad scholarship that people have invested into. We have, the fact that Jacob Hansen did that video where BYU or Deseret Book is publishing more queer Mormon theory from Blair Osler. We're real culty. We just don't like thought. Yeah. It's just such a stupid argument.
Yeah. It's a scare tactic.
You've interviewed Stephen Hassan on your show, and he's given a rubric. Well, that same author has called anybody that voted for Donald Trump a cult. He wrote an entire book about the cult of Trump.
Here's the thing. Say what you will about Trump. I'm not going to discuss politics here, but the idea, say, if you support Trump, you're a member of a cult, he's just retarded. But it kind of shows how absolute BS the Bible is if that's the case. You know, and frankly, as I said, I do believe Hassan to be an absolute grifter. So, you know,
And if you apply any of these bite model methodologies or any of these cult definitions, my show choir in high school was a cult. Apple is a cult. Wait until the next Star Wars movie comes out. It's a cult.
well, based on Steven Spoon, he's a cult.
Look at her face. What a great pause. Look at their faces.
Yeah, they are not happy.
We thought we had something there.
Credit to the Cardin, he really turned it on them because, as I said, like the terms were not defined, and using these kind of definitions, including the Bible of Hassan, anything and everything is a cult. The GLBTQ community is a cult using this kind of definition, because I'm sure Timber and other believe in Latter-day Saints are like celibate, you know, have been given like a crappy time from their you know, fellow GLBTQ plus members and being treated like crap, you know. So, and to be fair, I do think like the GLBTQ community is largely evil anyway in the cult in the true sense, but that's just me.
Well, and they all wear the rainbow flag, and they all fly their pride flags, and I mean,
yeah. So there's a uniform here.
Yeah.
I mean, even in politics, political parties, political ideologies, social philosophies, anything where you exclude. I think that
if you're going to anything, it's a useless definition.
And I think that if you're going to define a cult, it's a organization that is our way or excluded and ostracized and cut off. I think if there's a narrower way to define it, probably would include some of those criteria, which would make it at least more meaningful, because it's like, well, it would mean that employers couldn't be cults because you can get fired and still get rehired back, and they're not going to like blackball you and kill you or whatever. But like, there are some religious traditions that ostracize, blacklist, shun, eliminate,
you,
cut you off. Yeah. And I think but see, how many people have you heard have had members of the church? I have friends that joined the church and their families have done that because their church just can't abide that you left.
Jennifer's husband divorced
tradition.
her.
Right. So I mean, there's just.
But I think it would be unfair to claim like Episcopalianism or Anglicanism is a cult because of that. But like, you could actually make a case.
No,
oh yeah,
right,
but like, I'm just saying, being consistent, you know, you could.
but it means that there's a mentality that's superordinate in that definition that's required of the members, and I think that unless they're manifesting that, which members of the church are actively encouraged not to, we're told not specifically to cut off, ostracize, and ignore our family members if they don't toe the line or whatever that means.
Yeah, let's play a few more minutes.
That word is used in the same way, with the same inefficacy and the inability to back it up, unless you use people that, unfortunately, in your case, were not actually being truly Mormon.
Stephen Hassan would agree that Apple can have some of the traits of a cult or the military or an educational institution or a corporation, but he also has a harm continuum, a continuum of harm. And if you add up all the deaths of the People's Temple, Jim Jones, of you know, any of the cults you mentioned, it won't add up to the number of LGBT youth in the Mormon church that have killed themselves.
Bullshit.
No.
Well, what a stupid argument. That's the dumbest argument I've ever heard in my life. Right?
Oh, it has absolutely been debunked multiple times.
Yeah.
That is literally saying the church is directly responsible for compelling suicide.
On my screen, can you see like the Mormon article?
Yeah, we can.
Yep.
Yeah. Everyone go on Mormon or go on like LGBTQ plus and suicide rates and also the primary sources. There's like a bunch of LDS and non-LDS peer-reviewed articles. What John Dillon said is pure and unadulterated bullshit. It really is.
Yes, it is.
But it's trying to like give the impression, if you're gay, and believe me, I have some friends who are like bisexual, asexual, and so forth.
I have family members who are gay.
Yeah. That they're going to friggin' off themselves. I'm sorry, but this, I'm not one to curse, but this is pure, unadulterated bullshit. Look this up. It's an absolute kick in the teeth to like faithful Latter-day Saints who struggle with same-sex attraction. But go through the article and go through like the research as well. It is absolute BS. And here's the thing.
And look at how old the research is.
He's deliberately lying to give the impression, if you're LDS, you're going to friggin' off yourself if you're gay. Shame on him, but he doesn't have HM. He's a friggin' grifter. Yeah, no, this type of thing just pisses me off.
Mhm.
Any
When I
thoughts?
was attending the U of U, we had it was a big issue back there. It was early 2000s when I was attending U of U. And we had several presentations on this issue. And what was funny is that was the trope, is that the LDS church affects suicidality. But just like anything else, so I just recently watched a documentary that popped up on Amazon I thought was interesting. It talks about black serial killers, and the person who's presenting the information is a black documentary filmmaker, and then the guy he's interviewing is a black, he's a member of law enforcement and researcher, and he says, and he makes a really good point, that's exactly this. Once you start identifying a singular characteristic as being associated with some behavior, so for example, only white people can be serial killers, what happens is now all the black serial killers get a free pass because nobody ever thinks that black serial killers. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that he does, the guy's name is Little, but I can't remember his first name, but he is the most prolific serial killer in U.S. history, killing more than 95 people, 95 victims. He was active for over 30 years. He is the most dangerous and deadly serial killer, and a black man. And so he's like, all this, and it took until 2010. He was active from 1960 up until 2010, killing people. But nobody thought that the guy was a serial killer, could be black. And so they missed him for decades. And he says, how dangerous is that? So similarly, the guy was presenting this, his presentation on suicidality. He says, to ascribe suicidality to membership in a religious group or any other factor is to exclude all other contributing factors. Mm-hmm. It biases research against them. So I studied sociology, but at the U of U, but that was the point, is that they're literally, it's because you're Mormon. It's also because you're gay. It's also because of your socioeconomic status. I mean, you have to look at all the contributing factors. It can't just be because you're gay and Mormon in Utah, because hell, people who live in colder climates have a higher suicidality. Yeah, like literally,
so
people who live
in higher altitudes.
Yeah,
and we are at what, 3,500 feet here.
Poverty and cold. Actually, the two demographic factors that they were assessing is poverty and cold. And if it's cold and you're poor, you'll kill you.
And also note here, and the documentation is on the Mormon Order website, but 28% of LGBTQ members or people in the survey from 2019 did consider suicide. 49% who identified their religion as had suicide ideation as well. So don't get me wrong, 28% is high, but 49% for non, and let's face it, John Dillon would be happy if everyone's non. This is his side of the coin here, has almost 1 in 2 actually having this. And go through the article, it links to other scholarships so you can actually read it. But as notes here, data based on the 2019 Student Health and Risk Prevention Statewide Survey indicates that LDS students who are LGBTQ have almost half, that is only 50% of the rate of suicide ideation as non-LDS. So if there's a problem when it comes to the LGBTQ community within the church, there's a effing bigger problem outside the church, and he wants them outside the church. So basically he wants you to off himself using his logic. It's freaking despicable, and he knows better.
Well, let's just not gloss over the fact too that the examples he used are not analogous. Okay, somebody who has mental health issues then going because they unfortunately don't feel that there's a better way out, or they didn't get or seek the help necessary, is far different than a case like People's Temple or Heaven's Gate, where the religious leader commands the followers to actually commit these acts and kill themselves. It's not the same thing. Just even aside from the numbers, it's not, we're not comparing the same thing here.
Well, and look at the numbers, and that's the other issue is in the case of David Koresh in Waco, that was not a suicide. That was an attack by the ATF. The situation with Jonestown has specific factors that require analysis, in the sense that Jim Jones had armed men not allowing people to leave and forcing them to drink poison. So it wasn't. So there was that factor. So that is not the same. And then the Heaven's Gate, how many people was that? Like a dozen, 20, 25?
Yeah,
it was a small
like that,
group. Yeah. It was a small group that had lived together for 30 years.
And also, where are the Mormon mass suicides here?
Right.
I mean, like,
Yeah.
has there actually been any analogous situation in LDS history, like, mass suicides or anything like that, or like people drinking the Kool-Aid or the 19th century equivalent?
No.
Well, I mean, you could mistakenly and erroneously try to correlate the Mountain Meadows issue with some kind of thing, but the factors are so disparate there. Again, it's ignoring a more specified analysis. You start to look at the specifics of it. I get really pissed off. So, and the reason is so my father committed suicide, and to blame the church for that is absurd.
Yeah.
It's to ignore the specific factors of what led to that, including what was probably mental illness that was undiagnosed. Because that's the thing, is people who commit suicide are suffering from mental illness, irrespective of their external factors.
And if you're a member of the Rainbow People Skills, you do have like a higher rate of mental illness to begin with.
Yeah.
Well, already, I mean, think about it. Think about a world where society is saying, "Oh, you're LGBT, you're queer, whatever the terms they use," and effectively reality is augmented based on your perception of reality. I mean, that's dangerous. And the fact that people don't think that that's psychologically, and the thing is, John Dehlin, a psychologist, this is just,
as I said, he should know better.
He's a joke of a person.
Okay, well, that's kind of a go near the end.
So we can talk about just severity of, children are cut off. Some children are homeless because their parents kick them out. No.
I do think it's hilarious that a certain someone is complaining about like LDS parents kicking their GLBTQ kids out and disowning them. I'm not going to name names, but like Kettle Black, Pot Kettle Black much. For those who are in the know, you know what I'm talking about here.
Now, I'll admit the Mormon Church does a lot of good for a lot of people, but if you just add up the amount of harm, I think that's when it goes from just a silly trope to a very serious conversation.
I can't.
Where is the serious harm? Because like the examples he gave are complete and utter BS, and don't be wrong, like I'm sure there's like very unhealthy LDS, and like there has been like instances where like you could say, yeah, that's kind of cultic behavior, but that's like, it's not the norm, it's the outlier. So like, where is this awful behavior? Where are the mass suicides? Where like insert all these common tropes of what a cult actually is? Where's the genuine anti-intellectualism? And don't say heartlanders.
No, I was just going to say, there's a reason why all of those stories off the top of your head is because they are unusual. They are not the norm. That's why you know the stories.
Well, and let me just say this as well. I mean,
Yeah.
today is, the first Sunday of the month, so we have fast and testimony meeting.
I had state conference.
Look at you.
Well, look, there you go.
Mine was last week.
We have ours coming up pretty soon, actually. But there was a woman that went up and bore testimony and spoke about her life situation. She was saying how she was a convert of a few years now, and she was talking about her difficult family situation growing up, and how she didn't feel very loved, and she had stressful relationships with her parents, who are both now deceased, particularly with one of them, I believe, more than the other. And she was saying how she always felt that she wasn't worthy of love, that she wasn't enough, that she always had to do more and be more and prove more. And she actually talked about how, because she had joined the church, she had gotten into BYU Pathways, she was able to actually continue her education, whereas she wouldn't have had that educational opportunity outside of the church. And she talked about how the thing that she appreciated about it is that it didn't just focus on the intellectual aspect of it, but the emotional and the mental side of it too, and about how the education would point out, as she called it, thinking errors or false ways of thinking, and about how these ideas that she had in her head for most of her life of not feeling enough, not always having to feel like she had to prove something, were things that actually the church, through one of its institutions, had helped her to see and notice a pattern and help actually better her mental and emotional health. And I mean, certainly as been mentioned yet, but the church has family services, which I believe recently became free. There's no charge for it, I believe now. The church takes mental health seriously. Church leaders, the ones that I've worked with at least, take it seriously, and they are not afraid to recommend people to it if that
There was
seems
also
to
that
be
talk,
a
Mitch, if
route
you
needed.
recall, in that conference a few years ago addressing it as well, which is great.
Well, that's the thing, Robert, is the church has been addressing this for 35 years.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, what my problem with ex-Mormons who make these claims is, I mean, how often have you, I mean, you especially, Robert, with the significant research you've done and continue to do, is how often do they bring up issues and you're like, you can find an Ensign article on
Like
the
different
issue.
accounts of the first vision.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like the church published an Ensign article. The church published a Liahona. The church published a Deseret News article on it. I mean, the church is one of the most transparent organizations. What they're upset about is that it's become more transparent over the last 20 years, but surprise, surprise, in the era of the internet, right? As the internet has continued to develop, become more robust, and more information's been available, and that information's been digitized, wow, more information's available online. Whereas we no longer have to go to like little labs in Salt Lake and look through microfilm. So it's just such broad stupidity.
By the way, someone
sense,
commented, as a bisexual person, I find Dylan using same-sex attracted people for his own ends deplorable. Yeah, agree completely. It's despicable. Yeah, we'll continue.
What's the next topic? I want to hear Kwaku. I want to hear Kwaku.
Yeah.
The organization as large as the LDS Church doesn't have any damage. Obviously, people can do damage, but at the same token, if we hold every organization to a standard that implies they can't have any sort of cultural stains that the entire country has struggled with, well, good luck. And as someone who believes in Jesus Christ, my hope and my goal is we can get rid of it. We can get rid of that out of our church eventually. But that is not a unique Mormon problem. That is a problem that was given to us by the generations that came before, the generations that said separate water fountains, the generations that said, oh, you're gay, you should be going to camp, whether it's a Baptist, Mormons, whatever. That stuff is evil. But does that evil make us uniquely evil, or is that a Western American problem that has permeated these organizations?
That's a good argument. That's an excellent argument. That was a good argument.
I will say it's just based on that, because I know like it was a triarch thing. Really impressed by the fact that it was Cardin and Kwaku who were like the batter of the entire panel. Although Timber did a good job as well. But that was because like again, the cult definition in the Bible are so like crap. It cannot be applied to anyone and everything. And here's the thing: you can find like culty elements in anything and everyone, like anything, like a political party or like even like say a bridge club amongst like some grannies, you know. And so it's a pretty wordless definition. And also like it's like for shock value, you basically think like Branch Davidians or Jim Jones, and like they're just going to like either kill themselves or kill others, you know. But yeah, it's a useless definition. We might return to this later, but yeah, I want to take a break from that. Let's see if there's any...
I did want to comment on that title of LGBT, the church welcomes them. The church is incredibly welcoming of people, just people. I think that members, and this is one of the things I think is a social construct within the church that's very, very consistent across, because I mean, over my pretty lengthy life, I've attended, I was trying to think about the other day, probably 65 or 70 different wards. Members are so excited usually to have a new face pop up in the congregation. They don't care. They don't care if that face has tattoos. They don't care if that face is trans or gay or whatever.
Heaven forbid a ginger.
Yeah, they just don't care. I think most members, I mean, obviously there's bigots. There's always bigots. People who are going to turn up their nose at anybody. But for the most part, the members are just excited that there's a new face. There's somebody new here. And especially if it's your friend. This is my friend. Everybody's like, oh, we're welcoming your friend. I mean, I don't know that there's a community specifically to LGBT. I mean, I have seen a lot of evidence of that. My stake center right now, where they have the institute classes, has pride ribbons and flags up in order to be welcoming. I don't necessarily like that, but there it is. Apparently somebody's decided that that's an appropriate thing to do. So I just don't see this. I don't see the church the way that these people do. So what I conclude from that is people like Delin and the other 3 members of that panel that were doing X side, I think that they have a bias, they have an issue, they have a problem. Normally, stereotypically, Latter-day Saints would say they've committed some sin. But I don't know that it's necessarily a sin of commission so much as one of lack of participation or change in lifestyle choices. And as a product of that, they then overemphasize things that are stereotypical tropes leveled against us by outsiders who just are ignorant of how we actually function in the church. I just don't see that.
Strengths and comments. Hey, don't talk bad about gingers. We don't have souls, but we do have feelings.
Come on. Let's not be silly. Of course, gingers don't have souls.
But yeah, I don't know. That was a bit of a train wreck because the terms were not defined and stuff like that, and also that absolute BS about this suicide.
That's what I'd like to figure out what that jubilee is. I wonder if it's always like that.
I don't know. I never heard of it until like a day or two ago when Brad said like Baker was on it with Delin. We were wondering WTF because Delin.
Well, and then obviously, did you see the bias that the actual presenter had? So by posting the byte model, like, how do we define cult? And then the byte model appears, and then as soon as Delin says gays and suicides, some statistic I didn't catch it totally, but some statistic about the high number of people in the church that commit suicide or whatever are. So I mean, obviously the presenter is biased against the church. They've picked a side, which I think is ridiculous. So, I don't know. I do like that they at least got a diverse member of Latter-day Saint members of Latter-day Saint Church to be on there. Was there a girl? Was the other one a girl?
Yeah, she didn't say anything during that section.
Of course not. The patriarchy doesn't allow girls to speak.
May I ask what is the woman?
An adult human.
Somebody
female.
who identifies. As
No.
You're not
No.
a biologist, so what would you know?
Oh, I'm not a biologist. The worst answer.
Just identify one and you'll be fine. Someone asked, thoughts on the new Ben Shapiro rap? Cringe.
Okay.
I haven't seen it, so I don't know.
Okay. So I think it was funny that he was basically trolling the music industry, but what actually made me really laugh really hard was he called himself Dr. Dreidel.
That is funny though.
I thought that was pretty good.
It's pretty good.
And Jay
what
Cruz
is it like a video or is it a music video?
It's this kind of white rapper, but like John
You see the one with the tattoos all over his face?
Yeah, that's
yeah,
okay,
yeah.
I know
And
Ben Shapiro appears briefly in it, but yeah.
Yeah, he raps a verse in his newest song.
Yeah, the white rapper's pretty. I think he's conservative.
He's pretty decent, yeah. But yeah, I mean, the whole thing was silly, but I just got a real kick out of the Dr. Dreidel thing. I thought that was so funny.
And it's like the #1 song in the country or something, right?
It is like the #1 on iTunes all over the world.
That's funny.
Who would imagine Ben Shapiro would actually have the #1 rap single, you know?
Right? Yeah.
But yeah, that's back
I enjoy him
your subjective
occasionally.
feelings. Yeah, so like anything else what people want to discuss, because this is more like a Chillstream post episode.
Any other questions or anything?
Well, I'll let the chat. Okay, someone made a nice $10 donation. Robert, what are your thoughts on Eucharistic miracles, exorcisms, or Marian apparitions in Catholicism? How do you spell those claims? I'll just deal with, like, say, Marian apparitions, because that's going to be like a huge kettle fish. When it comes to, say, some of the apparitions like Medjugorje, like even Catholics will say it's either demonic or it's a fraud. They do some be grifters in Yugoslavia. When it comes to, say, Fatima, based on the message of Mary, because you have to understand, like, say, Fatima in 1917 and Lourdes in 1858, which are like approved apparitions, they affirm like doctrines which are not apostolic in origin and frankly are false, like the Immaculate Conception and the bodily Assumption of Mary. So like either there's a nationalistic explanation, pious fraud, to borrow from Dan Vogel here, or it's demonic. So that's how I would view like the approved Marian veneration.
What about the mother of Guadalupe?
Yeah, I do believe like
I think that's an authentic one, right? I don't think that they would have any choice. Mexico just accepts that outright.
Well, that's an approved apparition as well too. The version of Guadalupe and the Tilma, but it seems to be like based more or less like on a mixture between like say Catholic theology at the time and also the expectation of like say some kind of conversion of Mexico by the local traditions as well. So again, I don't buy whoever appeared to Don Diego or Sister Lucia and her relatives or Bernadette of Sorbonne or in Lourdes or whatever. If it wasn't angelic figure, it was a demon. It was not the true Mary, because what Mary affirms in those apparitions are not based on apostolic tradition, whether the Bible or the earliest centuries of Christianity. It does seem to be like reading back into like say later Catholic dogma and its development and frankly evolution. But frankly, I do believe like there might be like a pious fraud element. And when it comes to Medjugorje, even traditional Catholics, because it's not an approved apparition, tend to believe like it's either demonic itself or it's fraud. So that's basically my view of the Marian apparitions.
I was going to say, or like in Dairy Girls, where it was the dog.
There are actually weeping statue. There's like a belief in Ireland.
What are you talking about?
Well, in Ireland,
Girls,
like in the 80s and 90s, like there would be like a Marian apparition to a schoolgirl every second day, basically like a But there was a place called Banspittle where like there had like a Marian grotto and like a statue of Mary, and people would say like statue moved miraculously, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Or there's like a tradition in both the East and West, like say weeping icons or weeping statues. So like there's a TV show called Dairy Girls, which is like the second best Irish comedy of all time.
It is
the best being Father Ted, where like a dog takes a piss and it lands on the Marian statue, and you take it as like
and so she's crying because it leaked through the floor and landed.
They're like touching it and stuff. It's dog piss.
So funny.
Yeah. It makes all the more sense, like if you're Irish or at least you've lived in Ireland for a while. I'm sure you kind of got like some of that as well, Sarah, because you lived in Ireland for like a couple months.
That is one of my favorite shows. I think it's hilarious.
It's brilliant. That and Father Ted really captured like Irishness as well in the 80s.
No, that is one thing that people in the UK can sure produce some decent comedy.
Yeah.
So high quality.
You should check out Dairy Girls. You would love it. It's hilarious.
Like Stephen Smoot actually is a fan as well, and a couple others think it's hilarious as well. So
I've always loved British comedy. I like the Fawlty Towers and of course Monty Python.
Oh yeah.
Have you ever watched IT Crowd?
I haven't seen that one.
Oh, you should. It's hilarious.
Okay.
And then there's a couple of ensemble like Saturday Night Live type shows. I can't remember what they're called. There's one that's a comedy duo that's hilarious, and I see clips of it all the time. I can't remember what it's called either, but yeah, there's tons of those.
Yeah, but definitely do check out like IT Crowd. It's really good. It's about like these two socially awkward nerds in IT, and they have a new boss who faked her way through an interview, and she doesn't know anything about computers. But like they come to like a mutual agreement, like she'll try to make them a bit more sociable while they just do the job so she won't get fired. It's actually really good. There's like a football episode or a soccer episode where like as someone who has no interest in sports, it really hits home. It's like, oh hooray, he kicked the ball and apparently that deserves a round of applause. It's really good. But yeah.
Yay, home team.
Yeah, that's basically it, Well, there's no other questions from the chat. So like maybe like when it comes to like we're all engaged in apologetics, so like there's like very good arguments, but like what arguments are rather common, like say obscure, that you just find to be absolute cringe? And you wish LDS would just stop using them.
Like the Heartlander stuff?
Yeah, like
apart from Heartlander stuff.
Apologists making the arguments in favor or people against the church?
Oh no, like the apologists making arguments in support of the church. Someone asked, like, have you read the new book by President Nelson? Yeah, I did. And where to read? Yeah, it's not too bad. And Swenson says, IT crowd, when they changed the police's number to 20-digit number and no one can remember it. I can remember 0118999, and kind of continues like that, but you have to watch the episode. But yeah, so like cringe pro LDS arguments, not Harlander, because older arguments are cringe.
Yeah, they are.
That you wish like mainstream LDS would stop using.
The sticks. The sticks Ezekiel argument.
Yeah.
I wish they quit making. It's just.
Yeah,
it's just. Actually, I wish they would stop just in general trying to prove things like the apostasy using selected passages found in Preach My Gospel to like prove the biblical, because I think that they make an argument that they can't really support based off of a few verses, and it's the whole loss of priesthood authority, which is a really difficult argument to make. It's really hard to prove a loss of authority other than apostles died.
Yeah.
That doesn't prove loss of authority.
Presuppositions.
Yeah, it's a bad argument. It's something that's replete throughout the church. Almost everybody makes the argument. And the better, more objective criteria that I always go to is just the closing of the canon. The conclusion of public revelation is a better, at least it's a more objective measure of.
But it says the
evidence
of the end of the book of Revelation.
But it doesn't say a do, which is a much more solid word.
Touche.
So, but yeah, it's one of the worst. And once you've made that argument, effectively you're back to, I can prove it from the Bible. It's just it opens up the floodgate of crap you now have to deal with. And it's just better to avoid those arguments.
Yeah, someone said like another argument with like the 30,000 different denominations argument. Yeah, that's an nonsense. There are not 30,000 denominations.
There's like 7 to 10
main denominations, but like once you understand, like say Protestantism works in a different type of church structure and epistemology than like say Catholics and Eastern Orthodox and Latter-day Saints. Yeah, it's not a good argument. I mean, there is a way to use it, but it's not like say. Look at all the denominations. It's more like say, and usually that's an argument against sola scriptura, which it's not. But it should be like more like the problems when it comes to say the ecclesiology of these groups, and then it goes into like say the question like say what is the ecclesiology of New Testament Christianity, and is it anything like say either popular level Pastor Bob's First Bible Church, down the road, or like say more creedal confessional type Protestants like Lutheranism and Anglicanism.
Yeah, because if you're including those, like one of the things that's common is I know lots of people that when they're in between jobs, they'll open up their Bible, they'll decide that they're a pastor, getting a pastoral license. I actually am an ordained minister in the Church of the American something. I don't remember what it's called. I paid my $75. I've got a certificate. I hang it on my wall. But I'm an ordained minister in whatever that church is, so I can legally marry people in the state of Texas. But the point is that in looking at the arguments that people make is that anything that is a comparable argument for the church that's equally dumb from an evangelical perspective or a Catholic perspective. So the Bible is the Word of God because 40 authors over 1,000 years across 3 continents, and it's all one cohesive singular narrative. Like that's not a good argument for sola scriptura any more than Ezekiel is a good argument for the sticks. They're just not good. Because in fact today the guy says, well, what about the cohesive nature of the Bible? How could the Bible be so cohesive? And I said, well, it was written by the same people, Jews. Like a bunch of Jews wrote it. I know, but they did it over a long period of time, right? But their beliefs had fundamentally not changed.
Yeah. Someone just commented like not an obvious per se, but a fellow missionary used Issa Pastel 5, the Tree of Life stone, for definite Book of Mormon evidence. Brent Garner has a very good article on questionable Book of Mormon archaeology on the FAIR website. That's a very But yeah, it's even Nibley actually had a very good takedown of what was it like Alan or whoever like it was making, or Jakeman who was making the claim like Yeah, it's really the artifact itself is really cool. It has nothing to do with the Book of Mormon, though.
No,
and someone
and
mentioned,
Quetzalcoatl.
oh
That's a
geez, yeah.
model.
Yeah, everyone watched my episode with Brent Garner where he takes down
Mhm.
that.
Yeah.
So, and Craig says, Ward Radio just released a reaction video to Jubilee, so that'll be interesting.
Yeah, that'll be
Oh,
great.
okay.
I do wonder if they actually curse as much as I did per minute watching some of Dylan's nonsense, but yeah, I'll definitely try to watch that later
No,
today.
and I would follow up with that prior one with just archaeological. I struggle with an archaeological argument. I mean, even for the Book of Mormon, it's nice.
Nahum.
It's great. Yeah, it's great to have something like Nahum. It's great, but it's not. That's not conclusive because the actual research itself is not absolutely conclusive. There are opinions that vary on that. I mean, you could say, look, it's a good piece. It's a good marker. There's lots of scholarship to support it, and and the fact that what's the Ishmael stela, and it's great.
The funerary still, yeah.
Yeah, no, it's great. I mean, that's great stuff, and it's pretty. But I mean, even in the presentation of that material, they're like, "Oh, might not be that Ishmael, but it is awfully coincidental, right?"
Yeah,
I mean, it's
no,
good.
It's
something
interesting
cool.
seeing the coping and seeding though from like absolute idiots like Anthony Miller about this.
Yeah.
So I have a story to tell. So Neil is my new boss.
People that are like when John Dehlin when he says alt arguments are stupid, and he starts.
So I have a story about the Ishmael funerary stone. But Neil is my new boss. I see him every day. We were all hanging out on Friday during lunchtime, and he was ranting for an hour about this guy who has been following him around all over social media for months, like commenting on
Andrew,
posts
who
that
claims
have
no
nothing.
Arabic, yeah.
Yeah. Who like he'll be just jump onto Instagram posts on his personal Instagram that have nothing to do with anything that he does for the church, and just talking about how Neil translated it wrong, and he's like, I have all of these sources saying that it's translated exactly the way that I translated it, and this guy doesn't speak Arabic. He doesn't speak any of the languages that are necessary, and it is so funny. And he was just so upset because he's like, I can't put out as something, just rebutting every single comment that I get, but this guy is driving him crazy. Like I could hear him yelling through the wall before he went out to the break room for lunch, and he is just. It was so funny.
Yeah, we belong to like a Facebook chat group like Smoosh, his wife, Jasmine, and we're familiar.
You heard
with
all about it, yeah.
Yeah, of Dr. Andrew of Reddit University who purportedly knows Arabic. Apparently, it's a funerary inscription, but apparently it doesn't mean Ishmael. It means like he who hears or something like that. Which doesn't make any sense. You're translating the name, and also it's a funerary inscription. You're not going to have something like that. Yeah, it's cringe.
You would probably have a name. Right?
Yeah, I mean,
I would think.
Even
if
Dan
you're gonna put
Vogel
anything up,
even Dan Vogel who dismisses it says he doesn't dispute it reads Ismail.
You would at least write the person's name. Like I'm going to mark that this person's dead here. I'm just going to put the one who is great.
Sentence.
Yeah, just like
name.
Like the nice guy. I mean, nobody's going to know who the hell that is.
Unless you were Spike Milligan, then he would say, like I told you I was ill. But apart from that, yeah.
Oh, it was so funny though. Oh my gosh. He's like, this guy is just so dumb. How do I respond to this? It was so funny.
No, I will say this for that little video that we were watching with respect to just crazy people is when they make arguments, the people who are antagonistic, especially ex-Mormons, and you show them that their original point is really stupid, it is so great to watch their whole countenance kind of drop. And they're just like, because it's like they realize it was stupid. Like, we don't even have a definition for cult. This is too broad. It doesn't mean anything. I mean, these are just facile. And they're just like, because you're just dismissing, because it's a dismissible, superficial, two-dimensional claim. And it's just like, well, it's just like these crazy people. Usually they are perpetuated. And that to me is probably being somewhat in the field of apologetics like this. It's the most maddening thing. It just drives me nuts. that people double down, and it's like it's a dumb argument. The church never told me stuff. The church had like I say, what obligation did the church have to tell you everything?
Yeah, and usually, like in my experience, like not all, but like in many cases, like seems like they wanted the church to basically spoon feed them, or like I once had like a former member of the church in Ireland basically say like it was the duty of the church to actually have leaders of the church read from the pulpit all the gospel topics essays to make members familiar with them.
Why?
Because like it would be too much work to actually expect them to actually find them out themselves or on the website. It's really convoluted reasoning.
So, okay, going along with that, we just had somebody on our, I co-moderate the LDS sub on Reddit, and somebody got their post denied and was very upset because they wanted us to answer the question of what obligation does the church have to provide for its elderly members in retirement? And we were like, why would we post that? The church doesn't have any obligation at all to do that. And he was just so upset that we wouldn't post this thing. But we were like, this question makes no sense. That's not the job of the church. The job of the church is to teach you how to find your way back to Christ.
It's the job of the members, I would say. I would say the members have a covenant obligation to take care of the elderly.
Sure,
but again, if you're not fulfilling your covenants, I mean, sorry, tough luck, right?
Yeah, and
because you also have you have a covenant obligation to be self-reliant.
Yeah, I was just going to say, the member has some responsibility too. They have to prepare for their own retirement. They can't just do nothing and cross their fingers and hope for the best when it's time for them to retire. They don't have savings. I know.
No, it's just like the I mean, a lot of the I love the financial arguments. They're always the most fun. Like I requested assistance and the bishop denied me and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, okay, tell me specifically what happened. Because you're the one sharing the story. So now you want to share the specifics so we can all identify what a jerk your bishop was. Tell me all the specific circumstances. Those are private. Wait a minute. You can publicly denounce the bishop for the actions that he took and, quote, denying you assistance, but you won't tell us any of the specific circumstances under which he denied the assistance. So those are personal. Oh, okay.
Yeah. You should watch the Word Radio one that they just did with the Mississippi bishop.
Oh, really?
Because they get into the specific things that he left the church over.
What did he do? What did he do? What was one of them? What's an example?
So the one that just sprang to mind was there was this elderly man who he had an affair like 30 years ago, and he hadn't been able to have a temple recommend since then because he had been required apparently to write his wife an apology letter, and he refused to ever send her an apology for cheating on her, and he was like, he was just so upset as the bishop that this man couldn't go to the temple. And so he's like, I will give you a temple recommend. And so he called up the stake president and he was like, I'm going to give this guy a temple recommend. The stake president was like, no. He's got all these things that he has to do.
That's not your authority. Yeah, you don't have any jurisdiction.
Yeah. And so he was like, well, then I'm going to leave the church. And that was like the final straw. And he was like,
don't let the door hit you when the good Lord split you.
I know. So I was just like, that's not the job. Like you have, sometimes there are things that they have to do. And I'm sorry, but I've never heard of that being a specific reason to deny somebody a temple recommend.
His little public, whoever recorded that, I think it was a sibling or somebody that recorded that, published it on social media. That was one of the worst examples of somebody who exercises unrighteous dominion.
Abusing their authority.
Literally, that guy was a little king of his little kingdom. And somebody took away his ball, and he decided to run home.
Hold everybody hostage. Yeah. He holds the congregation hostage, forces them to listen to his little speech.
The senior supervisor told me I couldn't do what I wanted. That's all I heard. Somebody in higher up in authority told me no. And don't they know I'm the bishop? That's all I heard.
Oh, you have got to watch that video. There
No,
was some.
I disagree. I mean, if it was that, I'd have left the church a long time ago. I disagree with a lot of stuff. But I understand that sustaining is, I always explain sustaining is this. Sustaining is, I support you in the smart stuff that you do. I'll be there to help you.
Yep.
But when you make a really stupid mistake, I'll be there to help you as best I
Point and
can.
laugh. Yeah.
And then say, I told you so when it fails. I had one where the bishop did something really dumb. It was on a ward level, an activity they planned. I'm like, that's not going to work. Because a lot of things that we know, like for example, when the church told the missionary to go on social media, they don't know how many crazy people are on social media. Like, oh yeah, people be so interested in the church, but most of the people who are interested in religion are crazy.
Want to argue? Yeah.
And they're just crazy. And so I'm like, okay, I'll support it. So I also went onto social media. I thought I'll try to help as best I can, and then be like, see how crazy they are.
Mhm.
What were you saying, Robert?
Oh yeah, there's this question that came to mind because I was actually asked by a non-LDS friend this out of genuine curiosity. If you weren't LDS, like if you had to belong to like a different Mormon restorationist tradition, which one would it be and why? And also, if you had to be like a member of a non-restorationist group, like Anglican or Lutheran or Jew, what would it be and why as well?
Non-LDS, I would probably do Eastern Orthodox.
Because of the energy essence distinction and the rejection of the filioque calls?
Exactly for that reason.
Good.
Yes.
Of course. The nerdiest answer in the world.
No, just because I think that like the mass is really cool, and I think that the high church, I really like having that high church thing, but without the Pope. So I love that idea.
I would be a member of the True and Living Church of Christ in the Last Days, which is a small group of about 100 people.
Is that the Manti group? Oh my goodness, Travis.
They're the ones that and I can't remember if that's even the group, but there's one that's like that. That's called the True and Living Church of Christ in the Last Days, or something along those lines.
There is
and
like a TLC group that are like fundies.
Yeah. They do. I think they practice polygamy, but they also they literally baptize instead of the sacrament every week. So they only take the sacrament occasionally, but they baptize weekly.
So they have like the old practice of rebaptism for like
the whole sacrament. Yeah, the whole sacrament meeting is effectively meeting it like a pool and baptizing.
Interesting.
And I don't know what their doctrine is, but that sounds cool to me. Like, let's go get rebaptized.
It kind of like the picture of like say the Baptist church with the water slide outside, from the Babylon Bee. It's like I don't know which denomination this is, but like I like their theology.
Yeah. I don't know
what about yourself, Jedediah?
Oh, if it was non-restorationist,
Oh, and I also Eastern Orthodox because of the beards.
Yeah, I mean, I've always kind of been drawn to them, especially since learning more about the church and just what the earlier Christians believed. I mean, obviously, there's a reason I'm a Latter-day Saint because that's what I believe. But if it didn't exist, I would probably go the EO route. As far as other restorationists,
I know that one's hard.
Yeah, that one is hard.
Yeah, that's why I picked a sarcastic.
Can we all agree it would never be the Community of Christ because
it would never. Yeah, that I would.
Oh,
fact,
no,
that's it was that the FLDS, and I'm like, I wouldn't want to be. In fact, I ran into some FLDS people. There's a large group of them here, and so I run into them quite frequently, and so because they have a compound here, and so in fact I did some work with them for a while.
I would just say, I think I would want to join one of the Visions of Glory sects because
what's that?
Oh, John Pontius?
The ones who hold that book up as scripture, just because they are all just so insane that I think I would have a lot of fun there. Before all the Mercury started and stuff.
And you'd be the normal one in the group for once.
Yeah.
Jedediah, did you say which
exactly.
which denomination, which restoration sect?
See, it's kind of hard for me to pick because I have so many friends and so many different ones. um, I mean, there's always
Just
the
one of the
personable
polygamist
Josh
ones, right?
Gailey.
Obviously, one of
Well,
the polygamist ones. That
oh
would
yeah,
be the
oh
only
yeah.
criteria for me. I'd just be one of the polygamist ones.
I have
I'd
to
love.
say, I appreciate the remnant church.
Oh,
Yeah, it's not bad.
okay.
The 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 community of Christ split that went with
Yeah.
Mhm.
I'm trying to remember. I think their current leader's
They're
name, I believe, is Terry
they're
Patience.
anti-polygamist though. Aren't the
Yes, they
remnants
are.
anti-polygamist? Yeah,
Yeah,
they don't
follow
think
the
Joseph
I
Smith
think
is
so,
the
yeah.
twin
Or
volumes there.
what was
I was
that?
gonna say.
Yeah, they're firmly hold Joseph was never a polygamist.
Right, right.
Mhm.
Which I mean, of course, I can't buy into, right?
Well,
But
it's
I
because
think that
Doctrine and
they're
Covenants section 5 was modified later by Joseph Smith without authority to do it because only the first draft counts.
see. I will say I give the Bickertonites credit in that if they're gonna reject stuff like from Joseph Smith and Doctrine and Covenants, at least they just reject all of it, rather than try and pick and choose.
Pick and choose, like, well, he was a prophet when he did this section,
Yeah.
but not that one.
Yeah.
Like, that's just, it's such a special pleading argument. It's
Yeah,
so bad.
I mean, if I were to become a member of a different restorationist group, I have problems with loads of them. Like the community of Christ is a joke.
Yeah, me too.
Joseph Smith was a polygamist, so as much as I respect like the fact like some of these groups believe in Book of Mormon historicity and have a traditional moral theology.
See, that's what I
just cannot-
appreciate about the remnant group is
Yeah.
that even though they do reject that aspect, which I can't get behind, at least they are supportive of, yes, the Book of Mormon is a real document. Yes, we at least take this seriously.
I mean, probably like the other groups and maybe the Bicker Knights, because they do affirm Book of Mormon historicity. I'm friends with Josh Gailey. Hopefully, I'll be meeting him on Saturday because he's down in Utah. And also, they do have like a very strong view of like say biblical exegesis and stuff like that. The problem though is like they really have a very arbitrary system, like picking and choosing what after April of 1830 to accept and privilege. I mean, they basically are like the community of Christ when it comes to say Book of Abraham. It's like it was a fraud, or like it wasn't a true translation, stuff like that. Or Joseph was probably a polygamist, but like he faked section 132. Like how you can actually consistently sift all these things and still affirm, say, and be consistent applying that to say the Book of Mormon, the first vision and stuff like that. I just find there would be like epistemological inconsistencies and stuff like that. But they're
Or
probably
they
the one
claim, are they claiming some kind of ongoing revelation, or are they
They-
saying it ceased with Joseph Smith?
No, it's kind of odd. Like they do believe like there are revelations given like on a local level, and they're sent to the headquarters, but they're not like privileged on the same level as say the scriptures would be. But they're very Pentecostal like when it comes to say the ongoing spirit gifts and stuff like that, and speaking in tongues, and a very more like extrovert friendly than the introvert friendly worship in LDS churches. So but the same like I often joke like with Josh, they're the third largest restorationist group and the second largest to accept the Book of Mormon and take it seriously. So I don't know, it would be lucky because like I had problems like the Elijah Message churches hold the modalism, which is absurd. And seeing like my debate with Stokes on that. But yeah, so that would be a bit of a struggle. If I were to like a different tradition, I mean, I can't go back to Roman Catholicism because I kind of know too many theological problems with that system. Eastern Orthodoxy is very attractive because you have like say very strong ideology, deification and stuff like that. But icon veneration is idolatry. You can't convince me otherwise. So that would be a problem. And also like you would have to believe Mary was a perpetual virgin. I think there's some problems with that doctrine and that she was personally sinless as well, even if not immaculately conceived. No, I do like their view of like ancestral sin as opposed to the Augustinian understanding, like the fall man. That's very LDS-ish. So I don't know, like I would probably just do not seek membership in like a very creedal Anglican or Lutheran community just because they believe in baptismal regeneration. But like I would have like loads of problems when it comes to classical theism. And like if I were to go crazy, it might just be a Christadelphian because they're really interesting, even if I think their theology is crazy sometimes. But yeah, it would be a bit of a struggle. I mean, Grant Garner was here like a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. It's like basically it's either the LDS Church or atheism, because like what's the point? And it's like
And that's I'm in that camp, except that I've had enough of the subjective spiritual type experiences. And I struggle with and they've been, everybody has those where there's just, well, I hope everybody has them. I've had a couple pretty, foundational things that I just lead me to believe. Plus, honestly, I think atheism is unproductive. Even from a purely practical perspective. I tell my wife all the time, she's like, sometimes I wonder, and I said, well, the issue with it is I think that, well, so I've had a friend I've had a couple of friends who are atheists that have died, and it's impossible to provide any kind of consolation or comfort or even engage with somebody who thinks that they're either not going to die because they're so afraid of death, or that nothing happens when you die and you're just going to cease to exist. And the awkwardness of the interaction, I thought, how much more productive and helpful and beneficial it would have been if they'd have at least conceded to some kind of afterlife and just at least played the game. Because at least we could have communicated, we could have talked positively, we could have been optimistic, we could have been uplifting. It would have been better for the kids that they were leaving behind. It was just a terrible situation. Everybody was bummed and depressed. So I said, even for that, from a practical perspective, theism is much better.
Yeah. Spencer Krause is in the chat, so hi, Spencer.
Hey, Spencer, are you coming to work tomorrow?
Let's see. Join randomly to hear talks about joining the FLDS, and got to say, yeah, my interest. David Harper asks, any restoration sects that speak in tongues? And Krause notes correctly, the Bicker Knights speak in tongues. He also asks, any thoughts on Sassy Cram being Community of Christ present in light of 1 Timothy's teachings on women in the church? Definitely not trolling. Yeah, well, I'll just say this, like, it's really the cherry on top of the Community of Christ's apostasy over the last number of decades. Because like once you have,
it's like a big
yeah. I mean, like you have like John Hamer, who's like an open homosexual in a gay marriage, who's like a pastor, and he's basically an atheist in Toronto, basically saying the Book of Mormon's 19th century bunk and stuff like that. I mean, like that's. I believe he was a lying heretic, but like, do you feel sorry for Joseph Smith III? He's probably spinning his grave in hell at the moment, because like his church has even been more effed up than he did when he helped agree to form the LDS in the 1860s. I mean, like, I did say like it's a cherry on top, but it's a cherry on top so far. I do expect him to have like, say, a trans apostle in the next decade or two. If not earlier. So like, yeah, I mean, if you want, like, say, apostasy, in a Mormon restorationist tradition, look at the Community of Christ since the 60s. And what really sparked it, and I agree with the Prices, it was basically rejecting the Book of Mormon historicity and taking Joseph Smith and the foundational stories down. It's basically trying to allegorize the resurrection of Christ and his atonement and his second coming. It's like subjectivism and not really historical. You end up with, say, the United Methodist Church, Unitarian Universalism, number of other types of frankly heretical BS branches of Christianity. That's what you have with the Community of Christ. So I do like feel sorry to some degree, like, say, some of the remnant groups like broke off because they kind of realized, like, once you kind of go down this route, there's no coming back. But yeah. But so, like, them having like a female president, like, so far it's a cherry on top of their apostasy, but it's going to get worse.
I would say I have friends in some of those remnant groups, so I'm not going to go too far, but I would say it was kind of inevitable when they split off from the main group of saints back in the 1800s. Personally, you can kind of see, like, they are like the living example of what happens when you don't have a true prophet leading your church. Like, you can see it.
And that, again, so from a faithful perspective, it's the idea of for me, the evidences that God is real is pieces of wisdom that really do slam me in the face. So, for example, Christ says, "It shall be taken from them, even that which they have." So, the idea of the parables in Matthew 25, for example, where it's like we wasted and squandered what we did have, so we lose what we did have, and so it's taken from us. And so it's funny, you see it with the four ex-Mormons on that channel. They've lost any semblance of understanding of basic, like, even how the society of within the LDS church works. Like, I mean, it's like, have you ever, like, the way that a ward functions is not like that. The way that the members interact with each other is not like that. The way that we think isn't like that, right? It's not like we're out there, gay bashing on the weekends, which is how they treat us. It's like we're all chained to, all the women are chained to radiators and the men are out gay bashing on the weekends. It's just like, what do you think is happening? But, just like with the community of Christ, as they've gradually fallen, they've not lost. And I like that the idea that God doesn't overtly remove, you actually give up and forget and abandon. And so you're left in a state of complete absence. And it's the way it is.
It's a pretty clear example to me of exactly how the great apostasy would have happened. Because like you can watch it in real time happening.
There you go, Robert. The community of Christ is apostasy in action.
Yeah.
How did it happen? Well, I love it. So I always say the Book of Mormon is the what if. What if the Jews had listened to their prophets, right? So the RLDS church is the what if.
Or whatever, we weren't actually based on a lie to begin with, but that
what if?
It goes back to the century before. But yeah.
Oh, I'm gonna have to apologize to some people now.
It's fun.
But yeah, it's, but to answer your question, Spencer, and you're half joking, but at the same time, like, well, frankly, they don't really care about what Scripture says anyway about any of these injunctions. Like giving women the priesthood. But okay, well, we've been on for like almost 2 hours. So like maybe if there's no other questions in the chat, we'll end with this like question for like the philosophers. I think like, as someone who's been engaged in like apologetics for a number of years, and you guys have been as well in varying degrees, I've seen like a number of arguments, but I think this is like probably the best argument against Latter-day Saints. It makes the Kalam Cosmo argument look like a joke. It makes like certain anachronisms seem pretty piss easy to answer. And it's this: if LDS Church is true, why John the Baptist and not John the Mormon?
Let me draft my letter now of resignation.
I know.
Is that real?
Shelf is broken.
Say that? Please tell me that somebody actually said that.
No. Robert said it on his Facebook the other day.
Yeah.
I can think of like 8 people that I've interacted with.
It sounds like a Paul Gee argument.
I know, or like a Ron Denboer or a Wanda Callahan.
Yeah. No, but like I thought about, it's like it's John the Baptist, not John the Presbyterian. So don't baptize your infants. It's like, so if LDS Church true, why John the Baptist, not John the Mormon or John the Latter-day Saint? Jay.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, I guess I'll have to go back to religion of my childhood.
That's the nail. The nail
that
shelf
is broken.
How's that coming? Have you guys? Their episodes are due at the end of the month, right?
Oh yeah. The first episode is pretty well done. I think there's another trailer out. And then we were actually supposed to film yesterday, but Jennifer got engaged, so we didn't. So we'll be filming the next couple episodes next week.
Yeah, she's not having her
birthday.
What's that?
When's your birthday?
March 16th. Jen's getting married the day before.
Oh, I'm
you're-
going to a concert the day before.
Yeah, and she's not getting married anywhere where I can go.
I know she's going to Oakland.
I know. I was hoping that she would be in Utah and I could justify a trip
Selfish.
there.
So was
but-
I. I was like, well, I would have.
Why can't you make your whole life revolve around our schedules?
Exactly.
I know, Jennifer. Come on.
Is he from there or something?
I think that's probably where his family is. Yeah.
Because he lives.
I
He
mean-
must live in Utah, right?
Yeah, he lives in Sandy.
I'm gonna say at least she's not
Isn't
gonna
that close
move,
to where
though.
she's from?
Yeah, she's living
Oakland?
in Springville, I think.
No, where
yeah,
she's from. I don't know where
Oh,
she's
okay.
from.
Yeah, because she grew up
she-
in
in
one of those
Modesto.
towns over there. It was
Yeah,
where
she grew up
another
in
friend
northern-
of mine lived.
Yeah, she grew up in Northern California somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oakland
Yeah, and I
was the
think that's their
border,
temple.
southern border of our mission. Missionaries always
Yeah,
wanted to go to Oakland.
Well, we're happy
She's
for
from
token
Modesto. That's where she's from. I
anyway.
couldn't remember it for a minute. Yeah, she's from Modesto area.
Yeah. Yeah, and then she moved up to Washington and then Idaho, and then I think she told me all of this at one point, and half of it's gone out of my head. But I think his family is probably from there because they came in order to be there for the engagement.
That was nice of them. I wouldn't
Yeah.
have traveled for an engagement. Oh, sibling.
I think it was his children. So I
Still.
think that's why they did. No, I'm
Still, my mom was remarrying or something. I'd be like, good for you.
yeah, I'm not personally a fan of public proposals, but I mean they talked about it beforehand, so obviously she was fine
Oh,
with it.
by the way,
But
for those who are wondering, Jen's fiance, soon to be husband, I actually have a picture.
oh yeah, he's very nice. Not
There's
the
some
one I was
sinister
thinking
Jen.
of, no. What you should do is get a picture of her like doing the smiling thing with the ring and like Photoshop them together.
For those who don't know, that's Leo the 13th who, in 1996, said that Anglican orders are null and void. So, I often say to Jen, Leo the 13th did nothing wrong. So those in the know get it, but yeah. Okay, well, we've gone on for like almost 2 hours, so like really appreciate it. If there's no
Okay.
other comments or questions, including from a certain
That was
troll
fun.
called Spencer, what I'll do is like I'll end the stream, but hopefully we can actually have a bit more regular live streams now that I got the monetization problem ended with YouTube. But yeah, thanks guys for coming on. I really do appreciate it.
Sure.